commercial you're about to watch took $10,000 and a crew of 5 people to create over the course of a week. Take a look. What if I told you that the commercial you just watched was created by this guy in his bedroom? Now, most of you were probably doubting the first statement I said a minute ago, but in the next 8 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how I create commercials like that with no budget in my bedroom. So for our first shot, we have our light right there beating front and center down on our product, and I've kind of converted my editing space into a studio. A tip that saves me a lot of money is using my monitor as a backdrop. 2 tips to know though if you do this is 1, change your monitor's brightness all the way up, and this will give you a more pronounced backlight. And number 2, make sure your shutter speed matches the refresh rate of the monitor, or you'll get ugly black bars like these. To make the can look wet, I have this little water sprayer. And what I'm going to do is as it turns around, I'm just going to heavily spray it and hope that you get the water drop running down the edge while it's in frame. So while it's spinning around in the space that I want, I'm just going to spray it all and just hope that I get one that just rolls down. For this scene, I'm also going to be using a +2 macro filter, and you'll understand what that means in a minute, but it just helps capture a little bit more detail in that bottle and pronounce the water drops. Now that we have our raw footage in our editor, we have 2 options for cutting this can out of the background and replacing it. We could mask it, or we could rotoscope it. Masking is great for simple shapes, and I use it a ton on most projects, but for this we can see the edge detail of the water is going to be a nightmare to mask, so rotoscoping is a better option. All you do to rotoscope is you just click this brush right here, drag over, and then go frame by frame and fix it. I've already done it, and it takes about 30 minutes to get a good rotoscope. So once you've done that, then you have your can nicely cut out of the background. And what I've done after that is I've added simple keyframes for position just to raise it up. Once I rotoscoped the can, I pre-composed that layer, and then I did a simple color correction just to make it a little bit brighter, and I created a nice gradient background with the Sapphire plugin. I did that for both clips, and just like that, these 2 shots are done. These are the raw clips of the lime shot, and these were done with the same recording setup as the last shot, so there's no need to go over it again. The real magic of the shot was done in compositing. There were a couple main steps to go over, but the main one is just mask out the lime clips and then duplicate them. And the important part is adding unique scale, rotation, and position keyframes to send them in all different directions at different speeds. So what you can do is you can first change the speeds of the clips you're using. Second, change the starting rotation. And then third, make sure you change the scale. And then if ones are smaller and meant to be in the background, make sure they're lower down in the After Effects timeline so they go under the ones that are closer. As for the macro lime shot, all I did was stack 2 macro filters, the +1 and the +2. And then I got real close, and in post I just rotated it as it seems to fly by and reveal the text underneath. And then to tie the shot together to make it look like it's a closer shot of the explosion from before, I added smaller limes in the background to make sure it fit in. A quick PSA for the next shot is that we're using compressed air to get that frost effect, and what happens is when you flip compressed air upside down, which is what we're about to do, it releases toxic gas, and it's not lethal, but it is harmful and it will irritate your throat. So if you're going to do this, do it in a well-ventilated area. And thanks to Austin Paul for this idea. He made a whole video on the topic. He's an awesome product commercial YouTuber. I recommend you check him out. He does some insane lighting setups, but that's where I got this idea from for this commercial. The setup for the shot was very simple. I had the camera just looking directly down onto the can, and then I had a light 45 degrees from the product just lighting it nice and evenly, the large softbox, and that's really it. After that, it was just making sure I got a good spray and then doing multiple takes and going through them to see which one I liked best. Awesome, I think that's a good one. Now that we captured the first freezing shot, it's time to do the macro freezing shot. The only issue though is that my lens, the Sigma 30mm 1.4, doesn't focus closer than a foot, and for this shot I need to be about 2 to 3 inches away from the can. The way I get around with this is macro lenses. I picked up this pack of 4 for $15 from Amazon, and it has 4 lenses, a +1, a +2, a +4, and a ×10, and they are incredibly helpful. You can see this side-by-side comparison, and this is not zoomed in, this is not post, but you can see how greatly it narrows the minimum focusing distance, which is vital for shots like these. If you want something similar, I have a link to these down below. Now that we're all set up for our shot, it's time to knock out the macro variant in the same way. So here was our footage in post, colored and ready to go, but the issue is I didn't have a large enough ice tray to fully extend off screen, and this wasn't an issue for the macro shot, just this shot. So what I did is I put this shot into Photoshop and used AI to generate ice on the borders, and this is perfect because there's no movement in the shot, so it's just linear and static, and it works exactly as intended. For the first shot, the plan is to have the tab pop itself open. How I wanted to tackle this was tie a fishing line to the tab and pull it up, then mask out the fishing line in post. And that was a flawless idea until I looked at the can. The tab isn't aligned with the logo, which immediately caused a major problem. After thinking about this for a while, the solution I came up with was to shoot two separate shots. One of the can just sitting there, and one where the tab was facing the front. I then will composite them in post, so it looks like they were aligned from the beginning. After that, I created a gradient and color corrected the footage, and that shot was done. These shots took me over 2 days to film because originally I filmed a white bottle with a white liquid and a white floor and a white background, which is practically invisible and one of the most boring shots you can possibly make. And the issue with just keying out the background is that the glass distorts all the light and it makes it exponentially harder to key out anything behind it. So I decided that the only way to fix this was just to refilm it. I woke up the next morning ready to tackle take 2. Instead of having a white background on my monitor, I immediately exported the gradient I made in After Effects for the last shot and put that on as the backdrop instead. Here's the raw footage. The issue though is that I need this raw footage to match this raw footage and the backgrounds look nothing similar. So after 6 layers of After Effects magic, isolating different colors on each layer, I had this. And this was the final product, which I think looks great and matches the background. Even though there are slight differences, I think it flows quite nicely. The idea going into this next shot was to get a super close-up macro shot of the bubbles rising right after being poured. The only issue though is I wanted a macro shot, but I didn't have a macro lens. So I used not 1, not 2, not 3, but all 4 macro filters to get this monstrosity and put it on the end of my lens. The issue with this though is that our focal plane will severely narrow and we need to stop up our f-stop a ton to enlarge it enough to get any of the bubbles in focus. When moving up your f-stop though, you lose a lot of light, so you need to introduce more light or increase your ISO to expose it correctly. I'm using the same recording setup with the monitor as before, but this time the camera is less than an inch away from the glass. And with the absolute best behind the scenes angle ever, I got the shot. And just like that, our last shot was done. After days of editing and compiling, it was time for sound design. Here's the commercial with only the sound effects and no music. Thanks for watching this breakdown. If you have any questions or feedback, I will respond to all comments, and I'll see you guys soon.